sing our call to worship. What I bring to you is the best in me. I pray for highest possibilities. I am showing up, rejoicing in the I am shining in you. What I bring to you is the best in me. I pray for highest possibilities. I am showing up, rejoicing in the I am shining in you. Last time. What I bring to you is the best in me. I pray for highest possibilities. I am showing up, rejoicing in the I am shining in you.
Everybody's saying that.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Blake Ringsman, and I am very pleased to be your worship assistant this morning. I can tell we've got an unruly crowd here. That's a good thing. I hope that wasn't me. It might be me. It's a little loud. Can you hear me okay? Let's bring it down just a little bit, AJ, if we can. All right. As we always do, we begin, what's that? It's echoing. Yeah, that's God speaking through me. Brooke, everything is in divine order up here. Isn't that right? I think that's pretty good, but okay. So as we always do, we begin our service with prayer. Father, Mother God, thank you for this day to be together, welcoming with open hearts and open minds our guest speaker, those who are new to our fellowship, to our church here, and spring. We welcome spring into our hearts and embrace it as a new beginning, a new opportunity for the earth and for ourselves. Thank you, God. Amen. And let's say our affirmation together, which is on the screen, together. With every step forward, I am faith-filled and faithful. All right.
If you'd like to stand, we will sing. Spirit's journey, sailing on the ocean, ocean of oneness, ocean of love. Spirit's journey, learning what we're here for. Here we are together, together in love. We are unity, teaching each other, reaching a hand out, touching a friend. We are unity, growing in wisdom, shining our vision, growing in love. Spirit's journey, seeing new horizons, setting a course for living the truth. Spirit's journey, unity in motion, sailing on the ocean of love.
All right. We have a few announcements that I'd like to share with everyone. Our guest speakers for the month of May. This month we're honored and happy to announce that Jack Harnish will be back, and he'll join us May 7th. Kit Holmes will be with us on May 14th. Reverend Greg Coles will be joining us for the service on May 21st, and Judy Grimes will be back May 28th. And on the 21st, when Greg Coles is here, he will also be doing a workshop from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. the day before. That's Saturday, May 20th. And the purpose is to help us as a community discern how we want the ministry's purpose to be implemented. It allows each person to contribute to a plan and for each to know what their next step will be. The workshop will look at the 6 areas of ministry and discuss what we want to keep, what we want to eliminate, maybe do differently. In addition, Greg has asked that we each complete an appreciative interview form, which is available in the foyer, and return those by May 14th at Sunday service. Greg will use this information to guide the workshop. Coffee and snacks will be provided in the morning, as well as a light lunch. So please join us for the workshop, as everyone's ideas are needed to set forth the plan as our fellowship moves forward. Now, cleanup day. Earlier in May, we will hold our annual spring cleanup on May 6th. We plan to start at 9:30 a.m. and work till around 1 p.m., but please feel free to join for whatever time your schedule allows. Please join us as we devote our time and attention to maintaining our beautiful grounds and to appreciating the blessings of nature and doing it together. World Labyrinth Day. Following the cleanup activities, we will move to the Labyrinth, where we will celebrate World Labyrinth Day. This is an annual international event which serves as a moving meditation for world peace and a celebration of the labyrinth experience. We will walk the labyrinth at 1 p.m. Communities from around the world celebrate at 1 p.m. their local time, which creates a rolling wave of peaceful energy passing from one time zone to the next. Please join us in this declaration and celebration of peace. If you've never been to the labyrinth, you can get a look at it. It's right back here through the parking lot and up the little rise there. It's gorgeous. And finally, a death cafe. What if the secret to a life well lived is inviting death to be a part of it? On Sunday, May 7th at 12:15 p.m., we will be hosting a discussion group workshop to look at how to make death a more integrated part of life. So please join us. And Meg Young is going to be a part of that as well. And I don't know if you remember Meg, but she used to attend here, and so she and others from our church community will be putting that on, and it's a blessing. It's an opportunity to look at something that maybe we don't look at. Maybe we should. All right. I think we're all set.
And you can remain seated for this one.
There's a heart that will never turn away. There's a love that is always here to stay. There's a peace that will fill the world one day. And it's all inside me.
Beautiful. Now is a time where we enter into meditation, a very important part of our unity service, an important part of every day if we allow it to be. I invite you to become centered. We've brought the lights down. Release any distractions, any human concerns. And with each deep cleansing breath, we become more centered, more and more centered into that divine presence within each one of us. We loosen our shoulders. We place our feet on the ground if that is comfortable and feel the connection to Mother Earth. And with each breath in and out, we become aware of that inner peace. That inner knowing that all is well, that all is in divine order, perhaps in spite of our human judgment. We know we are exactly where we are meant to be in this moment. We open our hearts. We open our minds. We open our souls to that divine voice, that still, quiet calling that is always there. And we allow it to fill our hearts as we embrace and embolden the divine within us. Silence is golden. Silence resting in the divine is inspiration. And as we enter into the silence now, affirm your open heart, your open mind, your open soul to all that is new, all that could be, and all the divine possibilities that are there to be embraced in the silence. And as we return to this place, having called that divine consciousness forward and putting aside our human concerns. We know we are in a far better place now. Our hearts open wide to each other, to what is about to come, to what is here. And for this new opportunity, and for this revitalized divine consciousness, we are so very grateful. And together we say, Amen.
I used to be the girl who couldn't cry. My heart was so empty, and I didn't know why. Living in the future and the past, never in the moment, 'cause the moment never lasts. The finish line was all that I could see, until you spoke those words that set me free. And now the joy is in the journey. Every step I take is a choice I make now. The joy is in the journey. One day at a time, I'm learning to find who I am. I used to be afraid of letting go, afraid of standing still, afraid to grow. Now I see how far I've come with you, and now my faith is stronger than the fears I must walk through. The joy is in the journey. Every step I take is a choice I make now. The joy is in the journey. One day at a time, I'm learning to find who I am. And I will find my own voice in my own way. And I will live, and I will love, and I will pray to know the joy is in the journey. Every step I take is a choice I make now. The joy is in the journey. One day at a time, I'm learning to find who I am. One day at a time, I'm learning to find who I
And I invite you to take the journey, if you will, to visit and say hello and good morning to someone by you, Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome again. All right. All right. Am I on? All right, everybody. All right. All right. Well, I'm glad we got that out of our system. That was pent up. So now I know why we do it just before the last song, so that Carol can play the piano and get everybody set up. Yeah. So my mistake, but live and learn. No. That's my favorite part of Unity, believe it or not. So again, we are thrilled to welcome our guest speaker today. She goes by Sokuren. Sokuren? Pretty good? Okay. She is an ordained novice monk, and she is associated with the Battle Creek Monastery. And she is here today to talk to us, and I'd like to give her a warm Unity welcome, please. Sokuren.
Thank you. How is my voice? How about now? How is my voice now? Good morning. Oh, what a warm place this is. And I feel so high. I'm used to sitting on the floor or in a dark room. Maybe a little hot there with the microphone. I was on your website today and reading how your speakers are meant to give an uplifting message. And when I asked my teacher if I should come to speak, he said yes, and I want you to talk about suffering. Some of you may know Pema Chodron, or not know her, but have heard of her. Her name has been mentioned here a couple times just in this morning. And my teacher, Sokuzan, his teacher is the same teacher as Pema Chodron. So that would be Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and I brought his book here, so some of you may know of him. And I've also brought my teacher Sokuzan's book to give to your library. So if you're interested, yes. He has a book of meditation instructions, and they're very, very interesting. So I encourage you to check it out. So, suffering. It is really a foundational teaching of Buddhism. It is said that it was the first thing that the Buddha said upon awakening. He spoke about suffering as the number one noble truth. And I find it to be one of the most misunderstood teachings of Buddhism. And I see people nodding their heads. Oh, this path of suffering, it attracts unhappy, suffering people who just are filled with pain. And I want to today go into what two misconceptions of suffering are, and perhaps after I'm finished with my 5 to 10 minutes of talking, you can ask me questions and I will endeavor to respond to them, and we can go in it together. I really like the collaborative movement between you and me and what it is that's on your mind. And it can be about suffering, or it could be about anything. My path, or ordination, or being a monk, or Buddhism in general. So suffering is a word that goes back many, many years before Buddhism. The word is dukkha. It's a Pali word, it's a Sanskrit word, dukkha. It means suffering, but it can also mean dissatisfaction or unease. It could just mean I'm not feeling very peaceful right now, or I'm feeling like I need to busy myself with the dishes, and I don't really want to look at what is arising in the moment. There is a prayer that we say quite often at the temple, and I'm going to repeat it right now with this bell. May all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the root of suffering. May they not be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering, and may they dwell in the great equanimity that is free from passion, aggression, and ignorance. The second line, may they be free from suffering and the root of suffering. What is suffering? What does it mean to be free from suffering? What is the root of suffering? We all can somewhat grasp the idea of suffering on a level of, yes, we get sick. Yes, our body hurts. Yes, things happen to us that we don't want to happen. There are things that come out of nowhere, from inside, from outside, that disrupt what we call peace. And that's quite obvious to many of us. But the teaching is not that suffering occurs sometimes. My teacher says, when the Buddha taught that life is suffering, he didn't mean part-time. So what does that mean? What does it mean that a sunset, a beautiful sunset, is suffering? What does it mean that when you look into a baby's face or you hear a baby laugh, that that's suffering? How is it that suffering can be present in the most beautiful and precious and sacred places? And also, what about some people who say, I don't feel like I'm suffering, I'm a happy person, I'm resilient, I can move through these things and not feel like they bear down on me, I don't need help. This is a very difficult struggle for many of us. And I don't think I have the answers for you. I don't think I'm one, and I know my teacher isn't one, to make someone look into what suffering is in all of the places of our minds. That the teaching is everything that arises in this world has some subtle aspect of suffering, and that the truth that is posed by this teacher, the Buddha, is that everything that arises in this world, no matter what, inside, outside, body, mind, the world, it will vanish. That everything is subject to change. So, if that weren't bad enough, the teaching does go on. And it's not just that everything is suffering. It's not just that suffering is part-time. It's not just that there is suffering and beauty and peace. It's that it doesn't go away. That when I started practicing when I was young in my 20s, I thought, oh, I have found a thing, I have found a path in which I can eradicate my pain, that I can rid myself of any dissatisfaction, that I can purify my mind, that I can control my mind. And if I practice, as I did for 10, 12, 15 years, that at one point I will be so full of peace that no one can touch me. And I wish that were true. Who would I be if I were raised up as a queen on a throne and the rest of you were all down in the mud? At the happiest of moments, just around the corner, there is somebody that is in pain. So it's not enough. It's not enough that we find our peace. We need to live in the mud. And the Buddhists love that metaphor of the lotus and the mud. And this is the second point I wanted to make, which is we can find peace within the mud. We can look inside ourselves, sitting quietly, looking at what the mind spits up, and get to know ourselves, and get to know the dark corners. We get to know the hatred, and we get to know the peace. We get to know the love inside of ourselves, and we get to know the jealousy, the fear. And it is up out of that our light is able to shine with others, because this path is not about separating ourselves from others. The Buddha was a human, and the Buddhist path is a human path. It is not a path of the gods. And as humans, we fear, we get angry, we hate, we love, we hold. But above all things, we are walking with each other. And so we sit in meditation, and we get dirty. We get dirty in meditation. It's not about purifying our mind. It's not about clearing away the thoughts. It's about getting to know who we are so that we are more comfortable in being with others and who they are. And that's not always pretty. Well, I think I've fired myself up. I hope that that has given you a little bit of depth into suffering. I hope that you see that I am, and the Buddha is, and the teachers that we all know, have known and love, are like us. That we are no different. That we are students of life. That there is a lot to learn, and that our mission is to be with each other, to find peace within the mud, and to blossom alongside of each other. So I think I have a few minutes.
We have plenty of time.
Okay. So I open up the floor to anybody who wants to ask anything in any area. Suffering, Buddhism. I'm here with my partner Shoka, who you all have met in the baby, and then also my Dharma friend Kozan is also a Buddhist nun. Yes?
In the prayer that you read, there was a wish or a desire to be free from, one of the words you used was passion. And can you, when I think of passion, I think that in a positive way. I mean, I can see it perhaps a dark side, but could you explain your understanding of that, why that's something to be free from?
Yes, and that translation of the word passion is certainly, it's a translation of a word that isn't that your heart is on fire with love and openness. It's a word that is more clinging, such as, I want this so badly that I will push you out of my way. So there is an aggression to that passion. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I've learned on my path that, and it really surprised me when I realized it, is that I can be very unhappy or be suffering and experience joy at the same time. And in the beginning I was thinking, well, I was kind of like, well, I shouldn't feel that way. I mean, I have this big, heavy thing. Why am I experiencing joy? But I've been able to embrace that. And it sounds to me like that's kind of what you're saying. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it kind of says that you can be suffering because of other humans around you. You can be in the mud and yet still feel that joy and that love and at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Thank you. Yes, that's very well said. Yes.
So that just confirms what I thought. So. And you know, the interesting thing about unity too is that we see Jesus Christ as a human, not as a God. And that's something that's a little bit unique, I think, to the Christianity that we practice here, is that Jesus was one of us and was trying to say, you can be like me, and so it was interesting that you said that, because that's how we perceive Jesus as another fellow human, as Buddha was.
I love that. And we say that a mark of being human is being curious.
So what, I know that there are is it 8 noble truths that are part of the Buddhist philosophy?
There are four noble truths, and there is the Eightfold Noble Path. Two different teachings, but both spoken of in the first sermon that the Buddha gave. That is what is said.
Could you tell us what the 4 noble truths are?
Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. The question is, what are the 4 noble truths? Which came from a story of the Buddha's first sermon when he awoke. He gave a talk to the monks that he had been traveling with. And actually, that's where the 4 noble truths is in this book. And the first is the truth of suffering. And when we say the truth, we mean you see it all the way through. You see the subtlety of suffering, and you see the gross aspects of suffering. Ow, that hurt. That is feeling that pain, but also there's a way of feeling the subtle pain of suffering. The second is the origin of suffering. What is the root of suffering? The third is the truth that there is freedom from suffering. That is the possibility. There is a way out. And there is our uplifting message for the day. And when I say a way out, I mean a way through. And the fourth one is the truth of the path, which is what outlines the Eightfold Noble Path, which is the practice itself. Yes.
Maybe some clarification. So several years ago, I went through an experience, very emotionally and all around. And I did a meditation, and there was a feeling that came over me that was so overwhelming, and I couldn't place my finger what it was, and I just felt like something just shot out of me. I can't explain the feeling, it took me 5 years to realize that I let go of my ego self. And so what is, like, I know there's a lot of, back and forth about, you can never truly let your ego go and that type of thing. What is Buddhist perspective on ego and the level of positivity and negativity of it?
So the question is, what is the Buddhist's perspective on ego and the positive and negative aspects of it? The very foundation of Buddhism is a mistaken identity and I don't want to give you any hints because I myself am a novice monk continuing to be a student of the Dharma. The idea being that these negativities do not belong to us. That when I'm looking at my baby's face, I'm seeing not just the beauty of the baby, but everything else that is happening around the corner. And that there's no separation. Now that is a high level of understanding and a truth that can be seen through your own experience. The positive and the negative of the ego, and my teacher would say that the ego is not real, that it is partly conditioned by where we come from, and that we are living through those conditionings, that our perspective has somehow been altered in a way that we might be seeing what would be called delusion, attachment, clinging. But congratulations. And I would suggest that you find a teacher.
Changed after that.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't know how. It took 5 years for it to finally ping in my head, but.
Yeah, well, and experiences come and go, but then we're dropped right back into the mud to be close with people, and that's part of being human. How are we doing with time? Good? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yes?
And I might be piggybacking on somewhere and some what's already been said, but when you said the idea that the Buddha is human and that the practice is human as well, it sounded, to me, it came up with practicality, right? And that's, again, it seems like a really nice parallel to what we do here with our practical Christianity. But my ultimate question is, within the practice, where and how does forgiveness come into play?
Yeah. That's a big, big question. Yes. Yeah, so the question is, where does forgiveness come into play? I feel like I'm doing a spelling bee. So again, I'm in some ways I'm repeating what my teacher says, but I also feel that it resonates with me. To forgive someone is to acknowledge that you are blaming someone for doing something that is in their control. So let's think of the worst case scenario where someone you love is hurt by someone else. Out of where was that caused? And yes, on a relative level, the person who hurt someone is responsible for their misdeed or for causing harm. But if you were to trace back how that harm occurred and from where, it would come from unlimited causes. So in the lineage that I practice, the idea of no blame arises. That to blame another is to acknowledge that we are separate, and also that the causes of plunging a knife into somebody came from their own volition. And on a relative level, yes, they chose to hurt somebody, but on an ultimate level, We don't know. It feels so unsatisfying to say that. So we're lost. That's where we start from. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Your comments about suffering and, being in the mud and so on. There was a book I read several years ago by a psychologist named Thomas More, I think his name was, who wrote about depression as a beneficial thing. Depression is a way of telling us that there's something that we need to learn. That there's something from depression that is speaking to us, and we need to learn from that and actually embrace it and lean into it. Being in the mud, rather than I need to be, and it sounds like these are similar concepts from what I'm hearing you, from reflecting on what I read years ago. Am I kind of in the right?
I will repeat what I heard you say.
Okay.
That there is something about depression, or we could say negativity in general, that there is something to learn from. And I would say that's exactly what is being pointed to in this teaching. That it is not that we need to bring peace to us. It is that we need to, or we don't need to, there's no necessity, but that the possibility of seeing through the negativity, through which the peace will arise on its own. That, amen. And that is another teaching, that we are all good, that the basic goodness inside is there, that the obscuration that may cause us to do awful things is out of the suffering, and that the teaching of meditation and through practice, which takes a courageous soul to sit down and look at what it is that you're bringing, what negativity you may be bringing, no matter how subtle that might be, that will then unveil a peace within. Not that it'll go away, but that it'll be seen through, that the pain can stay, that there's nothing wrong with you, that you can be depressed and you can also find joy. But that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of courage. And I'll be right there with you. Yes.
Preface my question in reference to, I know very little about Buddhism, and what I do know, or what I've heard anyway, is the concept of reincarnation. Am I right?
That is spoken of, yes, in the texts, yes.
Okay. And is Buddha a person that has had a relationship with a god, or is he a prophet, or I have, like I say, very little knowledge, but these are questions that come to my mind. So maybe you could clarify, number one, is Buddha connected to God in some way, in regards to that particular religion anyway?
I was hoping no one would ask that question. I will repeat the question. The question is Buddha related or connected to a god in some way? Is that accurate? Okay. And I get this question from my 18-year-old a lot. Mom, is there a God? Do you believe in God? And it's a lot more difficult for a Buddhist to answer. Buddhism is a search for the truth that is seen through one's own senses. Now, have I seen a God? I have not seen a God in my eyes or my ears. I have not felt a God in my skin. So Buddhism, from what I know, does not discount the presence of a God, and it does not accept the presence of a God. It would say, or my teacher would say, the Buddha is not separate from God. Do you have a further question about that? It doesn't feel like it's clear.
So, a Buddha is simply a philosopher or a prophet or is it, I'm wondering if it's even considered a religion, if in fact there is no connection with God, it's more, as you say, a search for the truth. So, and what about the reincarnation thing? What is
Yes. Well, I want to address that second part, which is, well, the first part, that was the second part about the Buddha again being a God. If he was just a human? What I think your question is, and I wonder it myself, is if Buddha is not connected to a God or is not a God himself, where is this intelligence coming from? Where is wisdom arising out of? Who takes responsibility, or from whom does it come from? And we maybe in one faith will say it is coming from God. And yes, I agree that it doesn't belong to us. It is coming from a place that we can't, that feels separate from us. And I'm getting deep, and if my teacher were to hear this, I'd be a little worried. But I would venture to say that just like peace is our birthright, just like we were born with basic goodness, we're born with a wisdom that is embedded in us like a seed. And it is just obscured. And we can say God, we can put him as a him, and we can put it outside of ourselves. But I'm venturing to put my money on that it lies within, and that it can be uncovered by being kind, by being generous, and by what we would consider looking at the obscurations of your mind. And it's not just your mind, it's all of our minds. When we look at our mind, we see our parents' mind. When we look at our mind, we see our ancestors' minds. When we look at our mind, we see our partner's mind. When we look at our mind, we see our dog's mind. There's nothing there's no boundary of the mind. It isn't within the skull. It's everywhere. Reincarnation? I haven't done it yet. I remember it.
I think we have time for one more.
I'd like a question from my dad.
I guess it's a question I ask all the time. Are you happy with yourself on this journey? Have you found something?
That's a dad question.
The spiritual path is a path of not finding. And although the first verse that I read, may all beings be happy, but they enjoy the happiness, and may they enjoy the root of happiness. It can't be so unless it involves everyone. So I would say, no, I'm not happy, but I'm not done. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was wondering, you speak about the soul in Buddhism, or do they believe or talk about the soul?
Again, top two questions I hoped weren't going to be asked. But that is another difficult question. The question of the soul. Actually, Kozan has asked this question quite a few times in our book, in our studies about the soul, and what it is that, if there is reincarnation, moves between. What moves between? I would say. The Buddhist is very much a talker of consciousness and awareness. There is the idea of basic goodness, that there is something beyond the conditioning that we learn as children, beyond the spankings and beyond the revelations that we keep so tightly in our memories. And the soul, I would say, I don't know.
Because I think of the mind as being very, controlling, and the soul as being separate but not separate from the mind. But it comes from a different innate wisdom or knowing from inside, I guess is what. And so, I understand a little bit about Buddhism, but I hadn't thought about what, their interpretation of the soul was. You keep talking about the mind, and I think of the mind as very active, very busy, and it is about quieting the mind, right. But I was just curious.
It is a very interesting area. And the idea that maybe one soul may go up and one soul may go down, that the continuation of the separation, but to return to this area of suffering, which is so paramount in this teaching. Suffering occurs whether you go up or down. And there are heavens in Buddhism, and there are hells in Buddhism. There are realms that are described that are complete paradise and bliss, and there are states of meditation that are complete paradise and bliss. But again, anything that arises in this world that we experience is bound to go away. No matter how rich you are today, the possibility is gone tomorrow, and it may not. But that is a very unstable place for this human mind to live in. We practice looking at the deeper aspects of this relative world in order to see if there is freedom from the ups and the downs. Can we live amongst the ups and the downs? Can we give? Can we be generous? Can we love within all of that here and now?
Wow, thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. Would you be open to answering any questions afterwards or back? We do have refreshments in the back. Okay, now is the time where we consider our prosperity and sharing our prosperity with our spiritual home. As children of a loving God, we live in the light of abundance, deeply grateful for all that has been given and all that is to come. We embrace the good that God provides with joy and thanksgiving. And let us say our prosperity blessing together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Mother, Father God. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a fun one. We're hoping for congregant participation. Want to dance or sing or whatever? Please feel free. I can't help it. God is
Wow, wow. So, aren't you glad you were here today? Is this, AJ, I don't think my mic's on, but can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, I'm sure glad I was here. And Sokuren, thank you. Wow. That was deeply moving to me, and I sense that it was to a lot of us. And the questions are great. We did plant the 2 worst ones you were looking forward to. But I appreciate your answers, and it was touching. And I feel better for hearing it and knowing more about the Buddhist faith. So thank you for coming. I hope you'll come back. I really do. Okay, so I'd like to welcome first-time guests. We have a packet of information for you if you're interested in learning more about our Unity Fellowship here, and our ushers will have it available. We have prayer chaplains available up here at the front after the service for confidential prayer, and probably there'd be one out in the hallway too. They'll be wearing the orange name tags. It's powerful, and confidential. And at this time, I'd like to close the service with a prayer. Father, Mother, the seed within us, my heart is lifted and open even wider today. We are blessed to be here together in this fellowship, to hear these words of truth and of love and of promise. And we take this message and this feeling and this energy in, blend it with our own Christ presence, and take it out into the world to be a better place. For this opportunity, we are so grateful. And so it is. Amen. Let us join together in our circle as we do. You knocked it out of the park. Oh my God, that was fabulous. 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 Yeah. All right. Wow. This is a beautiful circle. Beautiful circle. And as is our way, I invite you to call to mind a person, a circumstance. Speak it aloud into the circle, calling the highest divine good to it, knowing that what may be our desire is not the true desire. It's not the true plan. But this or something better. Release these prayers, knowing that all is in divine order. And we consecrate these with our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.